This week on Let's Talk Texas, we've got State Representative Candy Noblein to talk about what it's like being one of 7 female lawmakers serving in the Texas House. We'll talk about the road that brought her here, as well as several key bills she plans to file this session, including one very important emergency item from the governor. Let's Talk Texas. Memorizing the Gettysburg Address in middle school. Do you think there's kids still doing that today?
I doubt it. Homeschool kids probably are.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, Christy Lamont has got the Lamont kids memorizing it for sure. Yeah. That's an interesting point. You know, civics education is always something that continues to be brought up. You know, do you think that that's something that helps inform kids when they, memorize speeches like that, or, memorizing the preamble to the Constitution?
I actually think it does. Because the foundational things are still the foundational things. And so if we don't know where we came from and why we came from there, how do we know what's truth and what's not truth that's presented to us along the way? Things, fads come and go, but foundation is what makes us who we are. And if we don't understand what that is, it's hard to know where we're going.
So speaking of where we're going, this session is underway. How are things going for you so far, Representative Noble?
Really great. I'm chomping at the bit, I must admit. We all are, to get some. We're beginning to hear bills, so excited about that, and be able to get them on the calendar and on the House floor without having all our memorial resolutions on the House floor. It's been kind of slow in there, but please, everyone should know that we're working hard behind the scenes. We are all working our bills and trying to get them set and ready to go be heard in the various committees, and the committees are beginning to hear bills. So I'm just so tickled about that.
So what committees are you on this session?
I'm on Human Services, where much of our state budget is going nowadays, between CPS and Medicaid. I'm also on Ways and Means and on resolutions calendars. Okay,
so Human Services, Ways and Means, going to be always popular committees during session. Yeah. So let's take it back a little bit. It's Women's History Month, and we wanted to start off with some of our star female legislators, here in the Texas House. I guess before we get into the meat and potatoes of session and the bills you're working on, I wanted to talk to you about what it's like being a female state representative here in the Texas House. What is that experience like?
I think it's great. I love my peers in the House. Both sides of the aisle are so respectful, and it's actually delightful to serve here. We all realize that we have a section of Texas, all 150 of us have our constituents that we need to represent, and I found it to be absolutely a lot of camaraderie. So
7 Republican women serving in the Texas House. Do you all get together? Do you have conversations about, how to work together or things like that? Or, is it just all?
Not formally, but absolutely behind the scenes. We are definitely in and out of each other's offices and by each other's desks on the floor and things like that.
So I guess as you're out there, you yourself have done a lot with the party before getting into office. I guess as people start to approach you now that you are kind of that role model for young women in Texas, certainly in your district, what is some of the advice that you give for the young women who are maybe eyeing public service down the road?
Well, here's the funny thing is, no one goes to college and majors in elementary education to end up in the Texas House. It's just not the path to politics, but that is what I did. And you know what? That makes me have a different perspective from others. No one becomes a stay-at-home mom to end up in the Texas House, and yet that's what I was able to do. But I spent so many years in service, serving others through my church, my community, my schools, that that did qualify me to have a perspective that's much needed in the Texas House. I think a lot of people think you have to go to law school in order to end up here, and absolutely, we have some amazing attorneys that serve in the Texas House, but we need the different flavors of different perspectives that come into play, and I think that's what makes us stronger, is that our Texas forefathers wanted us to be citizens first, and legislators part-time. We visit Austin, we don't live here, and I love that about Texas.
Wow, you sound like a real boots-on-the-ground representative.
I am.
So is that your advice to young women who are, looking at public service, maybe put some boots on the ground locally, volunteer organizations?
The first time I ever came to the Texas Capitol was when I was in college. I came down with a group of college students and was personally just lobbied for free on my own time for something I thought was important that year. Mm-hmm. And you know what? That was great foundation for me. I always enjoyed the political process, even as a child. I always thought it was interesting. So that is something that's been an interest of mine. So, but I will say that the women that I served with, I was in a Republican Women's Club for a number of years, that I had a lot of very savvy tutoring and mentoring through that organization. So if young women in particular are interested in politics, I encourage them to get involved in a Republican Women's Club and have women who have laid that foundation to be there for them and teach them kind of the ins and outs of politics. Because, sometimes we come into this having such grand ideas and someone has to tell you, that's a federal issue, or that's against the Constitution. So those are things that it's nice to have some background in before you run for public office, no matter what public office you run for.
Well, and that public service element, volunteering in the community, mm-hmm. be it with a Republican group or, local nonprofits, food pantries, what have you, that helps you build that network of local support and actually knowing the people that you want to go and serve, right? I imagine that helps you as you're having conversations about what is happening down here and how it affects your district, right?
Yeah, I ran the food pantry clothes closet at my church,
nice.
A large church. I ran it for 17 years as a volunteer. And that actually prepared me for human services in a way that very few things could have. I like to say that I have a compassionate heart, which I do, for those that are in need, but I also have a really attuned baloney meter as a result of that. And I'll tell you what, that comes in handy here in Austin.
No, are you telling me there's baloney flying around here in the Capitol?
Yes. Some people's motives are not pure. And I'm talking about people that come in from outside mm-hmm. that try to get us to take on certain expenses that are just not our business as a state. Mm-hmm. And we need to be able to ferret through those. There's a lot of really great ideas out there, but sometimes the private sector can do it so much better, or a nonprofit can do it so much better than government, and be much more effective. So those are the things that we really need to be able to understand as legislators, is there's a lot of good causes. There's a lot of good opportunities out there for excellence, but a lot of them are not our job.
Yeah. And do you feel like serving in the legislature just opens your eyes to that more, especially budget? Budgeting process, I imagine, has to really, mm-hmm. Allow you to see the full picture of how our state runs. I mean, $250 million budget.
When $1 million is just a rounding figure in the budget, that was mind-boggling to me, because to me $1 million is a lot of tax dollars, and it's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that Texans have sacrificed in order to provide. So it's important to me that we get that right.
Yeah. Well, speaking of getting it right, you've got a pretty full list of priorities yourself this session. I guess take us through some of the bills that you're working on this session, some of the stuff you're really getting ready to push hard for.
I have quite a laundry list of things that I'm working on. I'm filing some election integrity bills. A lot of us are. I think that they may get rolled into an omnibus bill, and I hope that can get through and get to the Senate. But if that's the cannon shot. The rest of us are carrying sort of the scatter shot of a shotgun, and hope that we get it all done. But that's something that's really important to folks at home. And another thing that I'm carrying, which is one of the emergency items, is one of the priorities is making sure that cities do not defund their police departments in order to fund their pet projects, which we did have at least one city in Texas do. And so that's House Bill 2695. I'm very excited to carry that.
So let's talk about that, because that was one of the emergency items the governor outlined in his State of the State. I guess take us through the basic steps of the bill. House Bill 2695, correct?
Yes, 2695. Well, we have. We're not talking about cities that 1 year buy 4 police cars and the next year don't need to. We're not talking about that. We're talking about cities that literally take funds that have always traditionally and been spent in law enforcement and protecting their citizens and having 911 callers, answer, and spending it on other things. And so a citizen of that, a taxpayer of that community may sound the alarm by filing a suit, and then that will be examined first by the judge, and then by the Criminal Justice Division of the Governor's Office, and
that's a taxpayer within that taxing entity.
Yes, absolutely.
So you have to be a tax.
We're not talking about somebody from Arkansas coming in and claiming that, right? That's important. That's actually really important, because we do believe in local control, but sometimes when let's face it. The most basic thing we expect from government is to be protected from those that will do us harm. And if we're not doing that as a government, we're failing in the most basic tenet of things that we're supposed to do. And so if you're a taxpayer in that entity and you don't know that somebody's going to answer a 911 call or show up in a timely manner, then you need to be able to say, hey, let's freeze the taxes, because I'm actually going to have to go hire somebody to come patrol my neighborhood, which we've had happen. We've had folks have to do.
So what is that punitive recourse?
In my bill, it's that their taxes are frozen at the previous year's level, including fees and other things. So they cannot bring in more money this year than they did maybe last year or the year before. Yep. And that's remedied quite easily with getting out from under defunding the police. So it's something that we can that can be re-examined very quickly as they come into compliance with fulfilling the needs of their citizenry.
And so how quickly does it kick in once a citizen has taken, a taxpayer, let's make sure we're very clear. Once a taxpayer has taken action, how quickly does that
first of all, let's hope it never has to happen.
Well, absolutely.
That's really the goal, right? Mm-hmm. Is to have cities step up and really provide law enforcement, right? But it would be, the court, first of all, they would have to file the suit, first of all. So I'm not positive about the timeline, but it would happen fairly quickly. And the getting out from under it could happen very quickly as well. And
so you had mentioned there's some review process, I guess, of the budget to look at specifically.
Yes. And that's the Criminal Justice Division of the Governor's Office that would be doing that examination.
Are they doing just a year-over-year evaluation?
They can go back 2 years.
Okay. So that seems to set up a pretty good precedent of, where was the bar before? Yeah. And I imagine that will allow the only city that I know of in the state that has done it.
It's true.
To come under this guidance.
Yeah, they are sort of the poster child. Austin defunded their police by what they claim was $100 million, and did things like gave a grant to an organization that provides transportation, housing, and food, and child care for those that are in the process of getting an abortion. Those are completely different buckets. And law enforcement and providing abortion services are two very different buckets, and definitely do not serve their citizens in the same way.
Well, and certainly at a time when Austin, really needed as many public safety folks down here as possible. I mean, you had the DPS and the governor sending state troopers here to protect the Capitol with the riots and things like that.
It's heartbreaking. If a lot of people haven't been to the Capitol this session yet, and we are wide open. My office is open. Please come see me. But honestly, the homeless population it's heartbreaking, and the boarded up buildings, the boarded up businesses are just heartbreaking in our Capitol. And you know what? I'm living here right now. I don't have a choice. I have an apartment here, and I had to take seriously how I'm going to protect myself from as I come and go early in the morning and late at night. And that ought not to have to be something that people have to consider when they come to their state capitol.
Yeah. And so in the definition of defunding police, as we wrap this up, because I know you've got more bills that we got to talk about, but I guess what is the definition of defunding police as in your bill? How do they kind of outline that?
Well, it has to be a significant drop in what you're spending on law enforcement, and that can include stopping having a police academy. You know, stopping filling any vacancies that come up, and so there's several different categories under that, but it basically means the bottom line is that you're just not investing as you have in the past in law enforcement for your citizens.
Well, I know that's going to be a hot button bill that'll be talked about quite a lot this session. We'll continue to follow it. House Bill 2695.
Yes.
All right. We'll make sure people can look it up, find out more details. What else policy wise are you pursuing this session?
I've got quite a few bills that will go through human services. Things that, for instance, in CPS, we have a. It's hard. It's hard, right? When you're talking about the pendulum, right? We want it to be plumb, and yet sometimes we swing it over to taking children that should never be taken. Other times we miss, and we leave a child in a situation where they are harmed or they lose their lives, and that ought not to be, right? So within that division right now, we really don't have an internal investigation to look at complaints, and it's too bad, because if ever an agency needed an internal investigation to say, yeah, you did fine, or you know what, we could do this better, or you have crossed a line to the point that you need to be criminally prosecuted. We need all of those options. So I have a bill that would take that division, what they have now, which is kind of consumer complaints kind of a division, and put it under the Office of Inspector General. And so that is something that I feel strongly about, that we just need those checks and balances. All of us do. We expect it from our police force. And I got to tell you, I think most people would rather come under criminal prosecution from a police force than under CPS investigations.
Yeah, and that oversight is something that people have been calling for a long time. I believe it was 1 or 2 sessions ago that they broke off DFPS into its own agency.
Absolutely.
And they're doing a lot of things great. Yeah.
I mean, gosh, I am so grateful for every one of the men and women that go into these situations and protect children. I'm so grateful for them. They need to know that if they have peers that are doing it wrong, that they're held accountable. And I think they will be on board with that.
Well, and I think even those parents who are put into a situation where a child is taken out of the home, I think they still want to be sure that that child is safe and being cared for.
Absolutely.
Even if they are, under a temporary situation.
Absolutely.
I know as a reporter, I covered a horrific story about where that went wrong. Too often. And you know what? This is not necessarily a Texas problem. I don't know a state that gets it right. If there were a model program, we would emulate it. It's just always a moving target when you come to it's one day at a time, one child at a time situation. And so we want to get it right. That is our heart. So I know last session you carried a pretty significant pro-life bill. 7 hours.
7.5 hours on the floor. It was our longest debated. That was me, the little freshman out there. 7.5 hours of debate, and that I actually ended up carrying Senate Bill 22, and the House it was 1929, House Bill 1929, and it made sure that it was a taxpayer protection bill. Taxpayers should not have their money their tax dollars going to abortion providers and their affiliates. It's just common sense. That is not a core thing that government should be doing with their tax dollars. And so we found that there were actually contracts on every level of government. We had a DA with a contract. We had school districts with contracts with Planned Parenthood and others. We had hospital districts, counties, cities, all in contracts with abortion providers. And I got to say, back to what is the basic role of government? It is certainly not to use tax dollars for something that so many of us feel is the ending of innocent life.
Mm-hmm. So, do you have more pro-life bills that you're pushing this session?
You actually have kind of a cleanup bill. One of our cities, Austin, poor Austin, they actually found an end around. I mentioned it earlier to instead of funding abortions directly, they have found a way to provide support services for abortion. So I will be carrying a bill. Donna Campbell, who is the senator that carried Senate Bill 22, and I are working on that, and we're very excited to have filed that bill once again. That is House Bill 1173.
There you go. Yeah, give those bill numbers. Yeah. If you ever want to look up any of these bills, folks, capital.texas.gov. That's your site to look up these bills and be able to follow them.
And I like to use my MYTLO, my Texas Legislature Online. That's how I find bills really quickly.
Yeah. So when you go to capital.texas.gov, you can create a profile to actually save bills and be able to
get alerts on them. Yeah.
All that stuff. Yeah. So make sure that if you are a policy wonk.
And let me talk about a lighthearted bill.
Okay.
Because I think some of our other ones have been kind of heavy lifts. If you have a pet, I love pets. If you have a pet and you have spent the money to get the microchip, and they are lost or stolen, which happens every day, there is no requirement in Texas that anyone scan them before they adopt them out or euthanize them. Oh, wow. And it's happening far too often. And so I am carrying House Bill 604. It has bipartisan support, and actually it's time. It doesn't even cost an agency money because the AKC has volunteered to donate scanners to anyone that needs one, any organization that needs one. So it's something that's past time. We've had, it was brought to me by a constituent, actually had 2 working farm dogs stolen from her property. Wow. And it took her months and a lawsuit in order to get those animals back from a not very legitimate rescue. Mm-hmm. And there's all of the legitimate rescue organizations out there are in support of my bill because they know that best practices are to reunite a dog with their owners as quickly as possible.
Yeah, well, and recently...
A dog or cat or whatever.
Right, yeah. Well, recently with the Lady Gaga situation,
yes.
Her dog's being stolen. I imagine this might bring this bill into focus as people start to say, look, there are dogs being stolen from homes, from individuals.
We actually had it was a Coast Guard trained dog that was stolen within the last couple of years. And they were out there in a rescue, and again, they hadn't scanned them. I mean, that was a very, very valuable dog. My understanding is it takes, close to $100,000 to train a dog really well to do law enforcement. So we're talking about an extremely valuable animal that needed to have been reunited with its handler as quickly as possible.
So, you're just all over the place. You got so many good bills that you're pushing. Is there any room left for anything else you want to talk about that you're pushing?
The truth is that I'm really a limited government girl. I'm only carrying probably 22 bills this time, and I only carried 7 last time. I actually carried the least number of bills in the House and the Senate last session, but I got 6 of them done. Mm-hmm. I have that one microchip bill that I didn't get done. But to me, it's really important that we as legislators, first of all, serve our constituents, because a lot of the bills that I'm carrying really have been brought to me by constituents who saw a need and saw a gap in Texas law. And I love doing that. That is the best part of the job, right? Mm-hmm. Is having somebody say, this is taking my time, energy, and resources to deal with, and Texas could do it better. So that's kind of my focus, is seeing how well we can do as a state in cutting red tape and using our resources wisely.
Excellent. Well, I guess as we wrap up here, if folks want to get involved with, policy down here or want to meet with your office, kind of what are your protocols and all that stuff?
Well, we're wide open.
Okay.
You can. We prefer that you let us know if you're coming, so we can. Constituents have a priority, but we would love for folks to come visit us and here in the Capitol. And my email is candy.noble@house.texas.gov. Would love to hear from folks on what's important to them. And you know what? Here's something that's kind of interesting. 2 years ago on Ways and Means, we were dealing with property tax issues. We had so many people contact our office. We had over 1,000 constituents say, I need property tax relief. One of my cities said, vote against it. And I was able to say to them, you are out of step with your citizens. Your citizens are begging me for property tax relief. So when we hear from folks on bills that are important to them, it really does matter. I actually know that when I go on the floor each day. So I encourage not just my constituents, but others to reach out to their legislators and let them know what's important to them, because I care what my city managers think, but I really care what my constituents think. And so, because that is, if somebody is taking the time to reach out to me on an issue, it's pretty important to them, and I take that seriously.
Excellent. Well, you heard it from her right now. Reach out to Rep. Noble if you're one of her constituents. I guess if they want to follow other things going on in the legislature.
Yeah, I do. I do a Noble report every Friday that goes out. And if you want to subscribe to that, just pop me off an email, Candace, Candace, Noble, Noble.com, and we'll sign you up for. Specifically say that you want to get the Noble report. Also, we post it on Facebook, so you can look at Candy at HD89 on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. I'm on all of those, and I enjoy hearing from folks.
Excellent. Well, there you go. Hit her up on social media, website, get signed up for the Noble report. Anything else before we get out of here? You got meetings today, hearings lined up. Are you off today?
I don't have any hearings today. My days are Mondays and Tuesdays that are pretty slammed with Ways and Means and Human Services. But I tell you what, it's right now there's quite a runway, but we are filing bills as fast as we can and lining up support for them from other legislators that are on the committees that will hear them. And so there is a lot of work to be done right now.
Yeah, and there's a lot of work going on down here. And unfortunately, so many people just focus on what's happening on the House floor. But, you guys are having meetings back to back. People are up here in the Capitol. There's energy here. Progress is being made. Committees are really going to take off now that bills are being referred. So I'm grateful that you had the time to come in.
It's been so fun, and I really appreciate the work that the caucus is doing. I'm thrilled to be able to serve as the secretary of the Republican House Caucus this session, and I'm really proud of what you're doing, Jordan, and all of our staff. We are blessed.
I get no credit whatsoever. I deserve zero credit. You guys are doing all the work. I just get to be, the cheerleader on the side, cheering you guys on and making sure people know the good work you're doing. Representative Noble, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.